I'd like to call this meeting to order. We're in a hybrid mode. Andy, do we need to say anything before we get started with that regard?
No, all members are present, so nothing else needs to be said.
Excellent. Establishing a quorum, I note Mr. Fritz, as planned, is not present today, but we do have a quorum. However, since our secretary is not here, we should appoint a temporary secretary, and I think Jason will be a great choice for that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. You win the prize. Next item is to approve our agenda. Everyone should have a copy before them. We do not have September 28th, 2022 meeting minutes to review, so we can strike that from the agenda. They haven't been released yet. Is there any other changes or suggestions for the agenda? No? But I'll move that we approve this agenda. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Very good. That's the agenda. You doing okay on the technical side of things?
Yeah.
Very good.
It look and sound great.
Excellent, thank you.
Next item is brief announcements by authority members. Jim, let's go around the table. Anybody have anything?
Nothing in particular. No, sir.
Yep. Waldo? It's a boring group today. Nothing from the chair as well. And that'll take us to public comment. We'd be delighted to take comments from the public, either online or here physically present. If you're online, hit your raise hand button or star.
There are no call-ins. So we
No,
don't
there
have
are
to
no
worry
call-ins,
about
so
the,
just
the star now.
Raise hand button. Anyone present who'd like to speak?
Sure.
Yes, sir. We'd be happy to give you 3 minutes of our time.
Sure.
My name is Thomas Sykes. I live in Roysville. Area. I've recently had some difficulties with broadband. It was very difficult under CenturyLink. The speeds, dial-up speeds and everything were very low. And I've gone all the way from not having internet up to right now I have about a 4 to 6, maybe 8 sometimes megabits per second, and about 0.3 for uploading to the internet, which you can do very little with. Recently, I called up and asked to upgrade my internet and was told, okay, fine, made an appointment. However, I was not called and told that there would be nobody to come later. Nobody showed up. And so I waited a couple of hours, and finally around 6:45, I called just before Brightspeed was getting ready to end up for the day, I guess. And we said, well, we'll try to have somebody out Monday, and nobody came Monday so far. And let me also point out that my internet was this affects me, not only my television, because I stream through the internet, but my phone service, because my phone, which is just like everybody else, cell phone, does not work in my house without Wi-Fi, and I can't get Wi-Fi without internet. Right? So basically, I don't have a phone. This is a paperweight at my house. I've currently been going to the fire station and borrowing their internet in order to get things like reading my email, contacting my family members at my home down in Virginia Beach. My mother and 4 sisters still live down there. I've also I've had various contacts with them, and they said, oh, well, this should be okay. This should be corrected. And I'm asking them when. I don't want, at this stage, I don't want anybody to come out and fix it. I just want my internet back. And they said, well, we can't do that, or it looks like it's fixed, but it's not. And we can't get your internet to come up. We can try to ping it. And they've done that several times. And they say, well, looks like it's working. And I said, no, my little light on the front says it doesn't. And I've rebooted it several times. No,
So whereabouts do you live precisely?
I live in Earlysville, Chestnut Grove Church. You hang a right, you go down the road, and I live on Fraze Mountain Road.
Okay.
The service is,
It sounds like exactly like what we would have expected under CenturyLink. And it's very disappointing to hear that it is the same or worse under Brightspeed. When did you first contact Brightspeed about this?
I called about 3 weeks ago, 2 to 3 weeks ago, to get an upgrade. All I wanted was an upgrade to increase my speed. I'm not in an area also where there's any fiber optic. They came to the end of the road, stopped. No fiber optic service in the area, which was very disappointing because I believed that I've been with this committee since its onset, since there was only one gentleman here. And we were all led to believe, oh yes, fiber optic, we're gonna get that. Well, they're not filling in the gaps, guys. They're not. They'll bring it to one spot and carry on to a community that's new.
Mike, is this something that the broadband office can help with in terms of reaching out to
Certainly,
Brightspeed
Chair.
and
Yeah, it's
following
been
up?
escalated with Brightspeed. They're aware of the issue. Need to contact Mr. Sykes with an update.
I just called. Yes,
No, I mean, we don't control the internet, but
I
we can call too and see what we can bring to bear to try and make this happen. I have been in your shoes. I'm not currently in your shoes. My internet's working now, but I'm out in Earlysville. My phone doesn't work unless the internet's up. And when it goes down, you're just stuck.
I was on Verizon and it didn't work on Verizon either.
Not good enough.
Not
coverage out
anymore.
there. Yeah.
But-
Or we'll do what we can to get some compliance in terms of meeting your needs for just getting reconnected.
And we also thought that the prices were going to be significantly less
Under Brightspeed?
under Brightspeed, but they don't control that. Brightspeed is just more or less a clearinghouse for bills and things like that. We're still coming under CenturyLink, I believe.
The name of the operating company that was acquired is CenturyLink, but it's a wholly owned asset of Brightspeed's.
Yes,
So I'm sorry, we can't solve it right now, but we'll, good folks in the office will work on it.
I'm not gonna wait till December. I will say that.
I wouldn't either. Thank you, sir.
Okay, that's my only comment.
Anybody else? What about online?
We do have 2 online, so we'll start with Mr. Dan Hogan. Mr. Hogan, if you can hear us, go ahead. Nicole, are we picking him up on the?
Can you hear me? Can you all hear me?
Just a minute, Mr. Hogan. We'll start your time over once we've got this worked out.
It looks like his audio isn't working. He has his microphone connected and it's unmuted.
All right, so Mr. Hogan, it sounds like we're having trouble picking you up on your audio. We're gonna take a pause while you try to readdress that, and we're going to go to the next caller. So we have Miss Jody Joy. Miss Joy, you can go ahead and unmute.
All right, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? I cannot hear you if you are responding.
She is not unmuted.
Ah, yeah,
Yes, she has.
I am unmuted. I am unmuted.
Oh, yeah, no, we're not picking you up.
Okay, well,
Yeah, please. Yeah, sorry.
Might be a problem on our end. We'll look into this.
Jody, I can hear you, so it must be
Okay,
on their end.
I can hear you
Staff
too,
member who is Listening in, she can hear them on the recording or on the Zoom.
Okay.
We're not picking them up here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that would be fair. You couldn't hear
Oh,
them.
look, now I'm
It'll
seeing,
likely create a little bit of feedback. We want to go.
That's why it's up.
are you hearing me at this point? Hello?
Bear with us while we sort this out, folks.
Excuse me, gentlemen, I have to leave. My wife was expecting me back. Y'all have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe from COVID.
Is in it. All right, go for it.
If I can be helpful in debugging since I'm connected here, I'm happy to speak up and create a terrible feedback loop.
That,
Should
yes, that is
I-
what would happen.
If your audio is picked up at all.
I have at least muted my system.
I am not muted in case, can you hear me at this
Okay,
point?
I'm gonna try this.
Okay, guess not. Hello? Can you,
To try speaking again.
Ms. Joy, if you'd like to try to speak again, I think we might
All
be able to
right.
pick you up this way. Do I
Yes,
need to
Jason,
unmute my-
I can hear you. Can
speakers?
you- Can you hear me at this point?
The issue is with his speakers, so yes,
Yes.
let's try that, please.
Hello? Can you
All
hear me at
right.
this point?
Yes, Ms. Joy, we apologize for that. You're gonna be a little quieter, so we're just gonna ask that you speak up if you can.
Yes. Okay, I'm Jody Joy. I live in the Milton Hills area, and we are part of the new fiber optic that Brightspeed is laying. We seem to have gotten caught up in a whole bunch of contractor issues, and we're in the middle of this transition from when we scheduled originally with Q at Q.com and were assigned install dates, which was supposed to be the tranching and then the hookup to the house. Well, those dates for many people, most people, were passed. And it turned out we had to go to now brightspeed.com and sign up all over again as new customers. This has resulted, at least for me personally, in double billing. So I'm being paid, have to pay CenturyLink because I still have their internet. I have a new install date for October 28th. Now, so there's the issue of double billing, and how are they going to resolve that? Because supposedly, as a current CenturyLink customer, everything should have been transferred over. Your account number, your billing arrangements, all of that. That did not happen at all. So when you log into CenturyLink, you're still in the old CenturyLink website. If you log into Brightspeed, you cannot log in with your CenturyLink credentials. So the systems are not talking to each other. So that's another issue. So in desperation, I requested an install date. I have it for October 28th, Friday. And then I instructed the neighborhood, since I handle the newsletter and communications, listen, guys, whatever we did at Q.com does not seem to be valid any longer. You'll have to go to Brightspeed and sign up and get an install date. So a lot of people did. Now, the issue is the technicians that are coming, not all of them realize, or they don't, that the tranching from the main posts or the nodes to the houses has not happened. So what they've been doing in most cases is laying the cable on top of the ground. A couple of people, 2 or 3 people, have actually had a crew come out and they dug. So it's very, very confused. Nobody knows what's going on. We're in the middle of a very confusing situation that we really need straightened out.
Well, thank you very much. I wish I could say your story was completely unique. Although I do think, at least my personal experience, my accounts got moved over from CenturyLink to Brightspeed. So that may be a little more unique. In terms of follow-up here, this sounds like just another issue to follow up with Brightspeed. I will have to say that the notion of laying your fiber on the ground at an install time and then trenching it in later, that is an old and trusted practice in the phone industry that irritates the heck out of me, but it won't be the first time that that's what someone's wanted to do. It's far better if they could trench it in and install it all at the same time, but that probably won't be what's happening for a lot of people.
So it's interesting because some people, I think at least 3, there could be more that I'm not aware of, have had the crews that do the trenching and hook up. That has happened for some people. So there must be a different set of crews that they are assigning, some capable of trenching, some not. So
Yeah, the ones who go out with the equipment that have that and the size of the crew.
yeah, it would be very helpful to get a consistent crew who did the trenching and the install all at the same time for your install date. Why that cannot happen, I'm not sure.
Mr. Chair, if I may, there will be some updates in the process that we're going to hear about shortly that might settle some of this and will hopefully create the consistency that Ms. Joy is looking for.
Great.
In the process with Brightspeed. That's right. And the follow-up on these kinds of issues. So thank you for letting us know. And we've been working with them on this kind of topic, and hopefully we'll have a better solution in place for the resolution of these things.
Excellent. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So we move on to Mr. Hogan now.
Yes, we are going to ask Mr. Hogan to unmute and we'll be able to hear you through this ad hoc system for now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Good afternoon. Yeah, so my name is Dan Hogan. I live over in Ragged Mountain Farm. I'm a member of the Property Owners Association, which is the position of which I'm calling in for this afternoon. First, I want to say I appreciate Mike and Jason's running of the VADI calls and also the correspondence I've had with them up to this point on this issue. Hasn't gotten resolved yet, but at least there's somebody to reach out to that's an actual person. As I know that I think many of y'all are aware with the main lines that are going in with Brightspeed, the main fiber lines, there's been a lot of digging going on. We're not the first and probably not the last to have a private line cut. Brightspeed did not notify any of the homeowners here about where they were going to lie the main line. And so they just started digging and ended up starting digging right next to one of our entrance pylons that clearly has electrical run to it. So they cut the line, they filled in the hole, even though they know they cut it, and moved on. It took us several weeks to get the hole dug back out. I don't know who dug it out, but this morning suddenly we have a giant hole now in our entrance area. So now we're going to get the issue repaired, but really terrible customer service with Brightspeed. It's possible to get a hold of anybody. Nobody's communicating as to what's happening. Mike and Jason didn't have any idea that they were going to dig up the hole. And then Sedgwick, their mediator that I had gotten hold of, said that nobody from their office would dig it up until 811 was called. Well, clearly that's not the case. Somebody dug up this morning. So, you know, they're not following their own policies that they're telling us about, and they're hitting things in the process. So, you know, not anything that I think any of y'all can do about it at this point, but I just wanted to weigh in as yet another person who has been harmed in some way, not physically, but by their errant digging.
Thank you. It's saddening to hear that, but thanks for the report.
All right, we have.
Recording in progress.
We're going to. Okay. We are going to stop that, and then we can resume our earlier.
So that'll end the public comment period. And we'll move on to the old business item. First off, there's an item here about confirming a rescheduling of our meeting agenda, meeting date in March. The 23rd to the 21st from the 28th. Mike, can you remind me why we're doing this?
It's to, yes, Chair.
Is it for
There's a conflict with the budget
budget
meeting.
process? Yeah.
Yes, sir. So what I was tasked with finding out whether this room was available on
That's right.
March 21st, and it is. So we've rescheduling to March 21st, 2023. And as a reminder, while we're talking about meetings, the November meeting is canceled. the November meeting is moved to December 6th. So for awareness purposes, December 6th, 2022 is our next Broadband Authority meeting.
And the rationale there was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving hardly seemed like an auspicious time for a meeting. And then the following meeting in December was right before Christmas or right after Christmas, I forget which. And yeah, splitting the difference seemed like a better solution. Okay,
And also just noting that that meeting has been moved on our calendars, so it should be on your calendar.
Yes.
all right. Let's go on to the body 2021 update. Do we have any update besides the corrective action plan?
We do. Thank you, Chair. The body 2021 update continues. What you see before you is the table of the passings that have happened. And for all those online and in person, a passing is a serviceable address. So it would be a 911 address that is entered into our GIS system and then proposed as a serviceable unit, whether that's a barn or any type of building that's been built. So that becomes a passing. And as you can see, one of our challenges is we're trying to build that take rate as both a broadband authority, and Jason and I in the broadband office, as well as our partners, Brightspeed, need to build that estimated take rate from 32% to above 50%. That's in our agreement with DHCD. The one thing to note, because this is a very large project going across multiple areas of the county, once an area is released so that people can start ordering, you'll see the pending numbers. For instance, Jones Mill Road has 2 pending activations coming. So you'll see as the process goes on, each of these areas may have new pending activations. Milton Hills being our most recent activation. There's a lot of people who have ordered service. There's some people who are still pending, and there are active people with the possibility of 172 passings in the whole project area. So while it's at 6% now, it'll eventually move up. So when we talk again in December, we'll likely have more project areas listed, as well as more active, as well as more pending orders coming through.
Wait, can you just put that into presentation?
I will try to do that.
Okay, but Chair, may I ask a question? So you mentioned like the DHCD, our agreement with them, 50%.
It may be a higher number than that. I need to bring up, I probably shouldn't even have put that number out there without having done a thorough research on what that percentage is. My mistake. I'll bring up the agreement.
That's okay, just for clarity, though, that is a goal of take rate, right? It's really passing that is that's not what isn't that what the funding is based upon? It's
Yeah,
passing.
good point, Mr. Henry. It is certainly we have to hit the number of passings.
Yeah.
That's the requirement. You're exactly right. The take rate, because it fluctuates, it's always going to go higher. That can't really be a designated whether the project was successful or not. So in a sense, you're absolutely correct.
Take rate relies on the resident.
Right, the homeowner.
Yes. Right, so
It's similar to the portable measure that we have.
Yeah, my mistake for, making.
I want to get it clear in my head. So I think tracking that is good, and we'd love 100% take rate as a goal. We just want to make sure we have clarity on the metric and requirement.
Thank you for the clarification.
And if I may, a key reason to keep up with these figures broken out by project area is that what we want to see is we want to see those pending for older project areas get ever closer to 0. This is not actually up to date. We didn't get an updated slide from Brightspeed by the start of the meeting. And so we don't know what the current state is. We do know that in the Tillman, that number should be a little bit lower as we had some positive installations done there. And we know that in Jones Mill, there were a couple of installations that were done. So we're hoping that we're getting to zero on more of those project areas.
Confused as to what the estimated take rate is based on. Is it in this table or is it elsewhere? Because if I look at the ordered service for Jones Mill, 13 out of 57 is 23%. But if I look at Milton Mills, 34 out of 172 is much more than 6%. So that one appears to be based on active, but the others appear to be based on ordered.
I think that is just a typographic error.
Thank you.
You want to continue with the 2021 updates?
Yes. So thank you, Chair. Moving on, we have Taylor's Gap, Rosemont, and Murray Lane. We are anticipating a November 4th, what is called the launch date, when individuals in the Rosemont area will be able to place orders. We're working to achieve an estimate on both Taylor's Gap and Murray Lane. And then out in the other section of the county, Stony Point area, Cabell and Cobham, we still have to, we're waiting for CenturyLink, Brightspeed to come back and give us an estimated start date for those locations. And we'll talk a little bit more about that during the corrective action discussion. Okay. So, as everyone is aware, we have not received an invoice for VADI 21 from Brightspeed. That means that the funding that the Broadband Authority has set aside for that project has not been provided to Brightspeed. And in addition, the funding that is available through the Commonwealth of Virginia for VADI 2021 is also being held. And one of the reasons is that the prior project, VADI 2020, which ended nearly a year ago, it's still taking orders. But that was the Green Creek Road, Howardsville Turnpike, a lot of the southern area of the county, lots of fiber was laid in that direction. So Brightspeed transitioned to Lumen. Lumen has access to the detailed data. Other way around, yeah. So we're actively working Brightspeed is actively working with Lumen to get the information that DHCD needs before they'll move forward with moving us out of a situation where we're withholding payment on 21.
So when they comply, the funds can be released.
Correct.
And I just want to be clear, completing the VADI 2020 closeout is describing administrative work and not any technical infrastructure work, right? Okay.
Correct. Thanks. Next. So our last meeting, we talked about granting an extension, or the Broadband Authority's last meeting, we talked about granting an extension on the VADI 21 performance schedule. That was submitted. The Broadband Authority approved the letter. It was submitted to DHCD. DHCD has since granted that extension to March 31st, 2023. So the period of performance for VADI 2021 is now officially to March 31st, 2023. Any questions about that process and how it proceeded? Next. So recalling that in September 8th, we had a visit from DHCD, which they're doing with all of their VADI 2021 partners, the Broadband Authority being one of many. We had a visit from DHCD, two individuals from DHCD came to Albemarle County, and we escorted them to multiple project areas. And they produced a letter of finding and a request for what's called a corrective action plan. And that corrective action plan has been circulated to the Broadband Authority. The broadband office has also added comments and had several meetings with Brightspeed to go through the process. And we now have that report or the corrective action plan submitted in paper format for the Broadband Authority to discuss. And with that, I'd like to bring forward Rich Shulman from Brightspeed organization to talk about what's next. Rich, it's all yours, and I'll advance the slides for you.
Oh, great, thanks.
Something I can
Chairman,
handle.
supervisors and members of the committee. I'm Rich Schulman. I figure maybe give you a little bit of background on who I am, because you're probably thinking, all right, who is this guy that's just suddenly appearing and how is he going to help work things out? So I retired actually 2.5 years ago from CenturyLink. I'd been there for about 15 years. Before that, I worked in telecom, and before that I did a career in the military. But I retired 2.5 years ago, and when I did, I took over running the Association of the Smaller Telephone Companies in Virginia, part-time, kind of semi-retired, with the goal of, I was keeping up with DHCD, input on the changes to VATI, working with issues with the State Corporation Commission, still serving on the Broadband Advisory Council. So I've still been in the mix, even though I've kind of been retired for that period of time. So why am I back here now? What happened was about, as I saw the transition happening from CenturyLink to the new company, they said some things that kind of struck me. Look at investment with broadband, doing something about copper, which I thought was always a big issue for us, and working on the systems to improve things. And so I went back and read the transcript from the hearing of the State Corporation Commission where they approved the transfer. Saw your comments in there and a bunch of other, from the county and a bunch of other counties and the citizens. I actually listened in to some of the testimony at that SCC hearing. And what I saw in there was the same thing. There's a commitment in from the company going forward to make improvements. And I decided I want to be part of that effort. So I came on, I think this is day 13 for me. I worked for, when I left Brightspeed, I was responsible for 12 states. I had 2 people working for me. One of them was Steve Brewer, who's on the line and is now my boss. But really what captured me was that the company was willing to make the investment, bring on the people, change the systems to make things better. And that was, sounds crazy, but challenging for me and something that I was willing to take on. I was willing to do it though, just if I had responsibility for Virginia. So that was the commitment that they made, is my job is going to be focused on working in Virginia with counties and state government. I've got a long history. I think Mr. Culp and I did some of the original VATI projects a few years ago here, and I've done VATI projects throughout the course of time. So I come in, although I've been here 13 days, I'm working as quickly as I can to get up to speed, helping on a lot of these issues that you see here to get these resolved, working with DHCD closely as well. So when I saw the corrective action plan and the DHCD requirements, I said, let me take this on and take the pen, start working inside the business units. I know you all have put a lot of comments in on it as well, trying to incorporate that, try and come up with, again, the whole point of the company, make these systems better, get things working better. I say all that knowing talk is cheap, and what really is going to come down to is the execution. And that's what I know you all are going to be watching for. And I'm sure you're going to give a little bit of rope, but not a lot of rope, to make sure that the improvements get done. So this is kind of the start for us, is this corrective action plan. And if you want, what I thought, if it would be helpful, I want to be respectful of your time, I can run through the steps kind of quickly and hit some of the key points for them. And if you have questions in there, glad to address those. But really, to me, it's three points in this corrective action plan. One is getting the systems right, getting what is that process, and let's get something that works. For instance, the buried site checks is not working. We know it's not working. That needs to be changed in order to get things done right. So I was on multiple calls with business units, figuring out what the right process should be. The next big piece is communications. residents have to understand what the process is. I mean, I heard, was it Mrs. Joy explaining the process, saying that people don't understand what the process is. The process needs to be laid out for everybody. They need to be able to literally look at a diagram and see what the process is. And that's why when I first drafted this, I thought it was important to show what the step is, what action that we as Brightspeed take, and then what is the residents' ability to input or influence what goes on there. So the idea would be, if you all approve this, DHCD approves this, we can create out of this a document that we can then share with customers. We can put it on the website. A tech can have this on a piece of paper, and it will be very clear to show the steps that are going to happen, what we're going to do, and then what the customer's input is in these, because it is a fairly complicated, very complicated system. So if I could just hit some of the highlights for it, and again, just wherever you've got questions, I'm glad to address some of these. So the first couple is, we begin working in the project area, and then service becomes available. I know that the website currently has a space on it where we've got what we call launch dates. But I think we can do, we've talked about this partnering together to provide more information there as to when things are actually happening and update that. And the idea that we would have is that our name would be on there. So this isn't somebody, customers are not going to say, or residents are not going to say, I'm here, the Broadband Authority says this is what's happening. It will say the information from Brightspeed is, and then what we anticipate those launch dates would be, so that residents would have a real direct idea of what it is and know that we're accountable for that. Then once the service becomes available, that kicks off the opportunity for a customer to go ahead and place an order. Once the customer places order, and this is the big change. Before, we've been having somebody come out and do this buried site check, which I think has been so confusing for customers, because they see a tech in their yard and they're like, I'm getting service. They don't understand that's not really what's happening. We've been doing this preliminary check to look to see what do we need to do to get service to that customer. So first of all, they've been disappointed because they think they're getting service that day, and they're not. But the bigger issue is we really don't need to get service to that customer quickly. We don't need that buried site check. We can lay that, in most cases, we can lay that temp line to that customer and get that customer up right away. And the service tech that does that not only knows how to lay, he'll lay the fiber, he'll lay the fiber out, but he also can do the install for the customer. So the customer at that first appointment is a happy customer because the customer is getting service at that point. Now, there are going to be some cases where we won't do a drop. Some of those are going to be, some of the time, and this is why, if you look over in the section, what does the customer do? We need the customer to be there on that day, because the customer may not want a temporary line for whatever reason. The customer may be somebody that likes to mow the yard a lot and says, if you put a temp line on there, then I'm going to, with my mower, I'm going to cut it. I don't want the temp line. Absolutely fine. You'll just need to know you're going to have a delay there before you get the buried drop coming in, because you've opted out of the temp line. There are going to be some cases where there's a safety issue. Maybe that temp line, maybe there's animals in the yard, and we don't want a place where we've got a dog that might chew up a line. So we'll say, look, this isn't a good place for a temp. There may be other issues. It may be a situation where to get from the node out to the customer, we've got to cross another customer's property, and we can't leave the temp line crossing that customer's property next door. We're not allowed to do that. So that might be another case. So there are going to be some of those circumstances where we can't do it, but our experience, and this is what I'm talking to our ops folks about, the experience so far is the vast majority of the cases, we can lay that temp and get that customer service right away and not go through the process of waiting and doing the buried drop.
Which sounds like a great thing from a faster timing. And maybe even better is if the person actually arrives on the day that the customer is expecting them to. Yeah. Because that's been a recurrent theme.
Yeah. And that's one of the process things that we obviously have to fix. We have got to be meeting those committed days. If we're not going to meet it, we need to get the word to the customer ahead of time. Customer ahead of time is going to be disappointed. A customer that doesn't have anybody show up that day is going to be angry. I'd rather have, I mean, disappointed is bad, but I don't want to see an angry customer. So going on to the next page.
Rich, if I can.
Yes, sir.
One of the questions I had in the original.
Yes.
Draft that I fed back to the broadband office is just what you mentioned. I think I agree with you. You know, so the communications aspect, but if an appointment is scheduled and for whatever reason the technicians are not going to make it, what is the time that you'll commit to notifying that customer? Is it night before, or you know, they're supposed to be here between 8 to 4 and they get a call at 4 saying we're not going to make it?
We should be letting the customer know as soon as we know that we're not going to be able to make it. That's when the communication should be happening. That's the process that's supposed to be there. Again, as I went back to said at the beginning, the key here is going to be the execution. I mean, if we've got the systems, we're doing communicating. Now we've got to execute. We've got to execute on that. And part of that execution process is the manpower issue. So, you know, kind of taking a step back, we brought on, I think to date, we brought on 35% more customer service reps. We are adding as quickly as we can to those numbers because those people are the ones that are making those calls. So we've got to ramp up our customer service folks as quickly as we can. We are bringing in lots of folks right now. And that's going to be one of the keys, is making sure we've got the people so that the contacts get made out to the customer. But ideally, we're telling the customer as soon as we know that they're not going to be there. Now, there are going to be some circumstances where, I'm having a hard time coming up with one right off the top of my head. But let's say, you know, something happens and all of a sudden you're not going to make it there that day, that morning, something happens. You know, a big storm comes through and all of a sudden we're in trouble. Some of those are going to happen, but those should be a fairly small number. You know, there's some that are unavoidable. But most of the times we should be able to give a customer a fair amount of notice that we're not going to be there. You know, we've all been through it. I never liked staying at home and having somebody supposed to show up to fix my washing machine and they don't show up. You know, I get it. I get angry myself. I completely understand why a customer would be angry in a situation like that.
Thanks, Rich. Just as a follow-up.
Yeah.
So just for clarity and kind of in my head on how Brightspeed is managing, you just mentioned you're bringing on more customer service reps, which is great. You're still relying on subcontractors in the field?
Yes, for a lot of the installation work, those are still subs. We just, at this point, don't have enough of our own folks to be able to do that. I mean, I know the company that's doing that contract. I've worked with them in the past. They're also having problems building up their crews, although I was literally on a call this afternoon listening on what's going on the projects that we've got currently going on, and they brought up more crews as well. So they're adding crews on as quickly as they can to increase their capacity. And then I mentioned customer service, but there are other areas too. Like we have an area that does our dispatching, and we need more people in there because those are the people that kind of handle the systems to make sure. So we'll be bringing more folks in on that side as well.
What kind of connections will you be making with the subcontractors from a quality control, just to be able to communicate back and forth, you know, status, installation success? Like, is that part of what this is all about?
Yeah, so we don't pay a subcontractor for the job unless we're sure the job has been done and done the right way. Now, there are going to be some times where we don't notice. The customer will come back and say, you know, the shrubs on the side didn't get replaced. But those should be pretty scarce as well. Our interest is making sure that we are not paying a contractor until they've done the job. And this contractor that's doing the work for us has been doing work for the old CenturyLink and is doing work for Brightspeed. They're very interested in continuing to do the work for us. And this is where they make their money. So we check to be sure that what they have done, what they say they're going to do before they get paid. And they know that if they do some damage and they haven't gone in and done the repair yet, they're not going to get paid until they get that repair done for us. Now, having said that, we need to do a better job of that. We obviously need to be doing a better job of following up and making sure on that. And that's one of the things that we'll be working to improve. Next one I wanted to mention is public utilities, Mark. This is an area that I think is confusing for customers, and I get it. I serve as the vice chair of the VA 811 board, so I spend a lot of time on 811 issues. Customers, and that's why I think we need to be really good at informing them on this process because they don't understand it. They see somebody come out and putting paint out, and sometimes they think that that's the Brightspeed person coming out to do something for them. Or usually they see a truck and it has nothing on it because most of the locators don't have anything on it, or they have a name that nobody would really recognize what it is. All they see is somebody coming out and putting paint on. And I hate to say, but if you ask that person what they're doing, they're just saying, hey, I'm just here to mark the lines. I don't know anything about anything, and that can be frustrating for customers. So I think we need to let them know that before we can do that buried line, we have to call in the 811 ticket and have the locate folks come out and do that. So what happens is when we call in a locate ticket, VA 811 knows who is operating in that area. They call each of those utilities, gas, electric, whoever, and they tell them, hey, you got construction coming up. You got a short period of time to get out there and mark those lines. And then they each, either themselves, but for the most part, have contractors that will then come out and place the marks, whatever the right color is for whatever utility is there. But we need to be doing a better job. And I say we, and it's really Brightspeed, needs to be doing a better job of letting those customers know who these people are, what they're doing, and that these are not the install people. These are people that are there that are there just to get the facilities marked so that we can come in and do the trenching. The next one is we come in and bury the fiber. Now, here's something that, I think it's the way we got to do it because it just makes the system work. And that is, we don't require that the customer be there when we come in and trench. If you recall, back when we laid the temp line, we had that the customer was there. So we know where that temp line is. We're coming back in to do the trenching of the line at that point. If the customer is there, you certainly contact the customer. If there's an access issue, we'll have to contact the customer. But for the most part, we're just going to come in and trench that line in and get it done and get that thing buried. Right now, we're not meeting our metrics for getting those buried as quickly as we want to. And the longer you leave a temp line laying on the ground, the more chance there is for something to happen to it. So we want to get those buried as quickly as possible. As I said, we brought on more teams that's their job. They're coming out and doing and burying those lines. And then the last part I know is a big interest. I mean, big interest for me, if I were a landowner as well, is damages. So, if the customer sees things, they tell us, they tell the crew that's there, hey, because that contractor is going to, the contractor isn't going to get paid if the job isn't done. If the customer calls and says, hey, you damaged my driveway, we're not paying that contractor until that job is fixed. Now, for most cases, I think we've done pretty well. And I've seen some emails recently where, something gets a water line gets cut and our folks actually were able to fix it. There are some things that are going to happen where we don't have the capability of doing it. So we do have a process in place that, and that's the Sedgwick for claims, where a customer can put in, we'll reimburse the customer the cost so that they can get it done by the person that has the expertise to do it. This should be a pretty rare thing that happens. And I don't know, that our folks with the office might have an idea in that, but it shouldn't happen all that often. Except, let me take you back one step, and that was on the marking of the facilities. So I didn't know that this was so much of an issue in the county here, but a lot of people have private water lines. So the other piece to this that I meant to mention when we were talking about the locates is that we need the customers to recognize that they need to have those private facilities marked before we come in and do that trenching. Now, the good news is when we lay the temp line, the customer will be there and the customer probably will point out, hey, this crosses the water line here. And the tech should be able to say, you need to make sure you mark where that is or have that thing located. We can't locate the private facilities for them. And we put in the description here, the contact that you all have worked with of the contractor that will come out and do that locating of those facilities for the individual. So that's, I think, particularly helpful for their private utilities. But again, as I'm explaining this, it sounds complicated, and we need to have some place, a document where we have all this laid out so the customers understand what the process is. And then on the complaint side, you've got two people in the office there that are getting lots and lots of phone calls. So we really believe that we need to try as much as we can to push them through, to get them to call us and let us get a chance at fixing it before they call you all, because what you all do is then come back. You don't know the answers to the questions. You just come back and ask us. So as much as we can, we're trying to get the customers to contact us first and have a first shot at getting that done. Now, I know the reputation that we have right now as CenturyLink probably was not that great. And a lot of times they feel like, oh, I'm just going to pick up the phone and call Mike or Jason. But hopefully going forward, as we get things improved, we get people calling us, we come out and do the repairs. There are going to be those odd ones, a double billing, Mr. Joy was talking about double billing, a question like that, that's probably going to, that may take a call to them and then us doing some more research on it, figure out what in the world could have happened on a double billing. So again, that's kind of the chart. On the tech side, I just kind of tried to highlight what some of the big changes, getting rid of that buried site check. I mentioned going just down. Secondly, bringing additional people in, increasing the workforce. I was glad they were willing to dedicate a person like me to be able to come in and help work on all of this and all of the different processes and issues that we're working. The bottom line to me on this is it's all about communications with the customer and its execution. But that's why I think these processes on communications are going to be really important, getting things that we can hopefully put on the website and also having a take-home sheet that folks can hand out that cover the process. I've talked a long time, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Rich, thank you for being here. It's only been 23 days that Brightspeed has taken over. I have a number of comments. You mentioned multiple times odd ones, some circumstances, sometimes, and that the reputation is not that great. I would say that is the most generous description of the reputation that you could come up with.
Yeah.
Not that great doesn't even come close
Yeah.
to the reputation.
And I recognize, I'm sorry.
But I also want to acknowledge you've only had 23 days that you've taken over. You want the customers to know the process, which is fine. I don't think there is any appreciation at all. I want to bifurcate this. I'm very appreciative of senior leadership that has come and has worked very closely with the county. I really am. And I want to express great appreciation for your local technicians because they are really good and they are doing the best they can. It's the in-between where the problem is. And I recognize from the pandemic, logistics, supply, manpower, all of the challenges you've got. But, the system, which now Brightspeed has gone from notifying customers of a couple of hour window to a half a day to 8 to 5. We'll be there somewhere between 8 and 5, and routinely they don't show up. And so, that's more than just an inconvenience. People have organized their lives around these expectations. And then when the person doesn't show up and you get an email that says, well, we're going to be there the next day. People have got jobs. They can't just take this number of days off. So there's a lot that really needs to be done to improve things. I am personally very appreciative of what this office has done, having recently had to go back to Brightspeed. On a good day, I have 1.4 and 0.4. That's on a good day, which is well below what we should expect. So I am willing to give you and Brightspeed time to fill in. But I think to say there are some circumstances or some times where things are not going to go as maybe contemplated is inconsistent with the reality. I think it's more the exception than the rule that the services, the calls are not being made. Just a week or so ago, I got 3 emails or text messages, I can't remember which one, that all had conflicting information on that day about whether the technician was going to arrive or not. One says coming, the other one says on the other way, the other one says you're not gonna, sorry, we can't have a technician there today. And that kind of confusion does not bring, a lot of confidence. So, and then finally, I have a question, which I don't know, Mike, you may be the better one to answer. A private utility locator company. So I know, I live out in the woods. I've got Dominion, so 811 comes and marks their lines, but they don't mark the internet lines. They don't mark the water line from my well to my house. So where can people find what the approximate cost that they now have to pay on top of other things to have a private utility locator company come out to identify where these other very utilities may be?
Yeah, thanks for that, Supervisor Price. I think Jason's well prepared to answer that question. We've done a lot of work around the private utility locates. It's a consistent problem. And we've identified a couple of local companies who will assist users with, or residents, community members with identifying their private utilities, whether it's a water line or an electric fence. Jason, you have the names of the companies, or I think they could just send an email to us. Anyone who's interested in working with us,
Yeah.
we're
I don't
glad
know,
to help.
possibly even on the county's website, if, I know we don't want to be promoting.
That's right.
companies.
It's a competitive market, especially now. If you think about all the fiber that's being built in the county with multiple providers. Well, mention to the broadband authority that Brightspeed is not the only fiber provider that we're supporting in the county as of today. We've got 5 active fiber projects going on all at the same time, and each of them have their own challenges. But we are very willing to work with individual community members by sending us an email. We'll help them find a competitive place, and they can go through and contract with whomever they like. We can't really promote one over
Right.
another. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Mike, do you have a sense of the general cost? I mean, is it $50, $5,000? Obviously,
I'll let
situations are
Jason
different.
answer that, because we came up with a creative solution, but it varies. So
Right.
Jason.
But there are a couple of challenges.
The median.
The range.
I will give you, so there are 2 challenges in terms of the cost. Often when you do a locate for a private locate, they're going to charge you a minimum number of hours. The rate varies from between $50 to $100 an hour. And because these projects are working at a neighborhood level rather than an individual house level, the recommendation that we're giving during the webinars to residents is to organize, put together your block or your neighborhood under one contract. And so that way, locate companies, they can report out as if they were a full contractor. They can report out time spent on this person's property, time spent on that person's property. And then the organized group can then divvy up the final bill as is appropriate. That is a great way to avoid excess cost, because often, and especially now that they're just going to do locates not on the whole parcel, but rather on the route that the temporary line is already taken, they might not be on your property for very long. And so instead of paying an hour to 2 hours at $50 to $100 an hour, you would be paying exactly what the locator spent on your property.
Which works if you're in a neighborhood, not so much.
It does work if you're in a neighborhood, it's less so. And I think that for that, unfortunately, we do just have to rely on.
But that's very helpful information. And I think also the way I talk to people who contact me is the difference between ABA and BAAO is, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, ABA helps to get delivery of service to a place. BAAO helps to continue if you're having interruptions with that service once it has been delivered to the property, so that people understand which office might be able to assist them. Same people, but different office. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just hope there's clarity as to how to reach Brightspeed when you need to reach Brightspeed, because there's a lot of issues with calls that just can't be approved. And that's one, and then, that also includes notifying property owners when they need their private utilities marked before their city tables.
Well, I think we need to, and I had a customer call me today that thought they were calling us. They called the CenturyLink number, and we've got a different number. So we need to make sure that we get that number out to folks or the website. I know a lot of people nowadays would rather, get on the phone and go to a website and do a chat or something. So we've got to make sure that we communicate that better. And Supervisor Perez, I have to apologize. I was trying to be very careful in my use of the verbs. I wasn't really trying to say that seldom is the way things have happened. I recognize that. I apologize. It's really, that's the way things should be happening. And that's my goal, is to make sure they happen under the plan. So
Dominion could also use to locate utilities. Twice Dominion cut the cable to my house to the internet because they didn't check the location of the cable.
Chair Walsh, just a couple of quick points. I recently distributed the list of affected customers. As a matter of course, that is includes private information of customers. And so at the end of the meeting, if you would all hand it back in. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is I do have a list of questions that Mr. Henry actually sent in that we'd be happy to address if you'd like. We have some answers. So the first was the frequency of ABA updates to the website on service availability. That obviously falls under our domain, and our expectation is to maintain a regular update cycle as long as we're receiving regular updates. So in the short term, we are hoping to get breakdowns of all the Stony Point and Keswick tranches. That's obviously the largest portion of this project. And so when that comes in, we will update the website to reflect that. And then every Monday we meet with Brightspeed. And if there are any changes following that meeting, we will update the website. The second question we actually addressed already. The third, for alternate installations that incur more than regular costs, how are regular costs defined?
I could probably address that one. So the example there would be a customer says, for instance, they don't like the path that we're taking, they want to take a different path. Or they want something a box put in a different place for whatever reason. So with each one of those, we kind of look, and a lot of that's going to be on the technician, to be honest with you. If it's an easy fix, probably the technician is going to be fine. If it's something that's going to cost considerably more, they want to take a completely different path, there'll be an estimate made on that. So it's kind of hard to say in general what those costs are going to be. But I don't know how many of those you've seen in the projects that you've done in the past. I don't think a lot of them, but just kind of thinking if somebody wants to do something unusual, they've got to recognize that there's kind of a standard that we're going to do. We're going to be pretty reasonable about it, but if you do want to do something really off the wall, it's going to incur additional costs.
And then the last one was, can Brightspeed track and report time to correction as part of the customer management system?
Yeah, I think that's something that we could do a better job of doing. I know that, for instance, I'm picking up 4 additional counties where I'm tracking complaints. So what I'm trying to do a better job is knowing when things come in and when I get things fixed so that I can change them. And I think that's something that we can do as well, as be looking and seeing how quickly we're responding to things. An example on the call I got, it was actually a customer called me a couple of days ago, left me a number, but didn't leave me their address. So I call them back and say, can you leave me your address so I can help solve your problem? And they called me on the way here and I was able to talk to them. But, so I got to think in my clock, all right, when did the clock really start for me to get the customer's situation resolved? But we should be able to figure out how long it's taken us to get and track that.
I am optimistic that with this corrective action plan, things will move in the right direction. I do not expect all of the problems to be resolved with the magic wand the next day. There will be some, for want of a better phrase, childhood diseases that we have to go through. As you get them one time, you solve the problem and you move on. But it would be nice if we could do that quickly, because as has been noted, there's a lot of angst and frustration out there among the customer group, and we'd all like that to not happen anymore. So with that said, yes, Charles.
Rich, thanks for being here and, you know, sounded like you sought out this opportunity. So that's fantastic. You know, hopefully you have a plan, so it's not just hope that there will be improvements done. You said you're only covering Virginia.
That's correct.
How active is the state of Virginia and where are you physically located?
So I'm in Richmond.
Okay.
And I was in Franklin County last week. I mean, this is the biggest project we've got going right now. So all the resources are focused on priority one here. And this has been my priority one. And there are a bunch of these issues that you saw that these are my top priorities.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I will continue coming. I will make every single one of these and I'll do these in person, make sure that I'm here and can answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that we approve the corrective action plan for sending that to DHCD. If there are no further comments.
Second.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, but and minor changes, we certainly approve. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good.
I have one question before we move on to body 2022. I just want to make sure that I have these events right in my head here. And Mike, I think you're the person to ask about this. If I understand correctly, we had heard from affected residents that they were frustrated about installation problems. You have acted as a clearinghouse aggregating these problems, and we're able to see that they rose to the level of a pattern. So you had reached out to VADI, or to DHCD, the agency for the benefit of folks listening, the agency that houses VADI, to say, we have a problem here and we need your help in enforcing this contract to make sure that this work is done properly. Invited them in, gave them a tour, and incited the establishment of this corrective action plan to get this fixed. Do I have that roughly right?
There's one amendment, and that's that the invitation to come in is actually their prerogative. So they were planning on instituting last year, well, for the VADI 21 cycle, sorry, the VADI 2020 cycle, site visits. That had to be waylaid because of the pandemic. So the expectation was always that during the VADI 21 cycle, they would institute the site visit. So the site visit was going to happen no matter what. We communicated challenges with DHCD through monthly reporting, but also by reaching out when we were hitting certain impasses. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Mike, I'm mindful of the time. You should probably march forward.
Yeah. We can move here pretty quickly there. So the 22 update, Firefly is working on producing schedules. Those schedules will be released on a 6-month interim. So we've been asked to send any inquiry about the VADI 22 update or anything that's going on with Firefly directly to their website. People can register to get updates at register.fireflyva.com. So there's a website that they can go to and get registered. And things are moving along with that particular project. Any questions about 22? I know there's been a lot of back and forth. We take probably 3 to 4 requests daily about when are we going to have Firefly or what project area are we in. So we've answered all of those in a timely fashion. Same with when Mr. Sykes earlier, he sent his request in, we answered it. So we are actively responding to every request. So it's been an ongoing effort here, keeping things straight. So planning there, we have not had any challenges to the VADI 23 application that we know of. TJPDC has not reported to us there are any challenges to our application. So it is now in the process of DHCD reviewing the application and deciding whether or not it will be funded. And right now it's pending a decision in early December, potentially up to the middle of December. Any questions about that?
Do you have any reason to think the announcement will be this year? Often these decisions are delayed.
Yes, sir.
So as early as December, but
Yes.
could be any time.
I believe
That
it
might
was
be a better tone.
reported to us by DHCD early December.
Okay. We'll see.
So just as a reminder, it's a significant process to go through, but we're just waiting to hear. And this particular match coming from the county will be processed through the broadband office rather than the broadband authority. So just as a reminder, those are the details on what's going on with 2023. All right. Financial report is next on the agenda.
No change in the financial.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
All right, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jason Inafuentes for the Broadband Accessibility and Affordability Office report.
And I will be brief. We did receive the public notice from the FCC on what is known as the Your Home, Your Internet and ACP Outreach Navigator pilot programs. The benefit of this program is in the ability to move residents who are low income from unconnected to not connected to connected and receiving this this great benefit. So the Your Home, Your Internet program is targeted at public housing and affordable housing residents. ACP Outreach is for general population that may be eligible. And the way that we're hoping to leverage this is actually as part of a coalition. So we've started meeting with residents with stakeholders from UVA, as well as lots of community partners, including JMRL, Department of Social Services, schools, and JABA and PHA. And our hope is that the application will come out soon, and we would apply as the primary, our office would apply as the primary with support from all of those partners. The goal would be access to the verifier. That's the tool that allows us to expedite actually getting people signed up, and a small grant to staff a couple of positions for navigators. Navigators are a really essential piece in digital inclusion because they are trained staff who know how to get people through sign-up processes for these programs, sign-up processes for service, and then are able to do some basic assistance in getting people online and resourced. So we're really, really excited about that possibility. The application is likely to open up next month. And then we would find out about an award for that in the spring. The other news is about the Chantel Beam service termination. We've fielded lots and lots of phone calls and emails about this. We briefly mentioned it last week. It's about 277 residents that were impacted. Based on our analysis, half fall within either a current service area, so they're in an area that is served by somebody, and that's at broadband speed, so not just DSL, or they are served in a project that will wrap up soon. So that is either the VADI 21 project or a private expansion that is currently ongoing and likely to wrap soon. And then the other half falls predominantly in the VADI 22 or 23 projects. So a projected end date there of 2025 to get them online. For that half, we are working with Chantel to come up with a solution that will allow them to transition to a different fixed wireless solution. T-Mobile at present has offered that any resident that is affected by this can go into their retail store on 29 North, and they will receive a MiFi that they can pick up at no cost, take home and test out. And that will give them some idea of whether they're going to be able to utilize that service. T-Mobile is also expecting to broadly expand their rural availability of coverage in the short term. And so this is not going to be a smooth or perfect transition. Our hope is that all of that other half are going to be in a comfortable position to wait for future connections, and all in that first half, as many in that first half as possible, are going to get connected before the cutoff date.
That's better news than we were hearing.
Thank you, Chair. Jason, you called that a MiFi?
Yeah, it's similar to the Beam device that you had in your home, but geared for T-Mobile.
Thank you.
But that come with an extended contract time requirement?
So we are advising anybody that is in the position to have to find a solution to avoid those contracts. We are not aware that it currently comes with a contract. As I said, we're still working with Chantel and by extension with T-Mobile to come up with a favorable solution.
Thanks for the update. That's great work. You know, someone that's on the 50% that has lost that, you know, that service and knows that sometime between now and 2025, that's probably a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
So if this is a reasonable solution, that's great. I think it'd be good once there's enough detail behind it to communicate to the whole board, since all 6 board members are getting
Absolutely.
paying pretty hard on
Yeah.
this. So
Thank you.
if that's something the office could do, I'm
We'll
not
do
saying,
that.
I'm not saying do it tonight or do it tomorrow at the right time. You know, it would be a really good update to the board, and it could be just an email.
Absolutely. And I will add, we have reached out to all of the providers in our area, sending them lists of addresses that are in either a service area or a project area, and asking them to make sure to be on the lookout, and if possible, to do outreach to those locations to let them know that service is or will be available.
Just to, so we're all on the same page, I want to make sure that I have my talking points here right. Do I remember it correctly that Chantel was licensing spectrum that is no longer available to them? They can no longer use that spectrum in order to provide this service?
So this is a business decision, but in order to complete the transaction that they're attempting, they have to actually vacate the space. The analogy that I'm using as a contrast is when you sell your house, you usually can, you know, build in a 2-month window where you have time to move out. That is not the case in this particular transaction. They actually have to have vacated the space at the point where the transaction has occurred. So that is the reason why they are unable to continue the service for any amount of time beyond the 30th.
Okay. I've had several people, I live in the Stony Point area, several people say to me like, well, can't you make them keep offering service? And I have to say like, that would be deeply illegal and inappropriate. No, it's wrong, also wrong.
Right. And as we covered at last month's meeting, they have met the whole agreement,
Yes.
Including the 18 months of maintaining continuous operation of the service. So they've done, as we said last month, this was an incredible, frankly, a gift to the community during a really challenging time. And so we appreciate their investment and frankly regret both the loss of the service, but also their loss in having to close the service.
Yeah, a lot of kids at Stony Point Elementary really benefited from that under COVID. Okay, thank you.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Very good. Strategic plan discussion with 5 minutes as a timekeeper. Chair.
I'll make it 8, but yes, I have incorporated all of the comments that folks have made and all of the edits and changes. And I don't know if anyone's had a chance to review the final product. And
I had no idea you'd resolved all of those.
I think I've resolved all of that. There's some editing things that, you know, after you make a bunch of edits to a document, there's a couple of paragraph markers that need to be reset, but content wise, I think it's all correct. So what I would offer is that, well, I would love to move this forward tonight. It's our strategic plan. I would ask the authority members to use the link that Mike distributed. Take a look at this document in its current format, and let's vote on this at the next meeting. Or if you find something outrageous in there, please edit the document, put it in there, and I'll check it again. And send that around to everyone who might have looked at it already to let them know. Oh, and by the way, helicopters or whatever it was that you added. Okay, does that sound like a plan?
Could Mike send that link out again as a reminder? That would be.
Mr. Culp, would you please do
I
that?
will. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Will do.
Thank you.
Is there any other business for the authorities? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
It's the board
Thanks very
supervisor,
much.
we're the fastest in first and second.
Assume you're